Deepa ji.
Shall we start, sir? Yes.
Yes.
Good evening, everyone. I am CA Deepa Goswami, moderator of this webinar. We are delighted to welcome you all in webinar organized by Continuing Professional Education Committee of ICAI. It is my pleasure to be a moderator for this session on Introduction and Basic Estate Planning and CBIC Audit Manual and its practical approach for CS. In short while we will start this webinar, I would like to apprise you about CPE committee. In today's ever-changing professional scenario worldwide, the biggest challenge the professional face is how to stay on the top of their game while adapting to new requirements and norms. Therefore, it is imperative to aim to be up to date, to offer unique guidance, influence others with their innovative approach and expertise. It is also vital to scratch all ideas beyond the traditional boundaries to create new perspective. In this context, continuous professional education facilitates professionals to maintain, improve, and broaden their knowledge, skills, and expertise required to achieve their professional goals through webinars and seminars, etc. We are pleased to inform that ICAI is organizing its first ever Global Professional Accounts Convention, GLOPAC, on the theme Connecting the Globe, Creating the Value, from November 24 to 26, 2023 at Mahatma Mandir Convention Center, Gandhinagar, Gujarat in India. GLOPAC is being celebrated as a mega event to display the important role that accountancy profession has been playing in building stronger and more stable economics around the globe. It would provide an opportunity to global market to network the best and FS talent in India. I would request our technical team to play the teaser for this.
It gives me immense pleasure to announce that the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India has decided to organize its first ever Global Professional Accountants Convention, GLOPAC, on the theme Connecting the Globe, Creating Value, on November 24th to 26th, 2023 at the Mahatma Mandir, Gandhinagar in India. GLOPAC is being celebrated as a mega event to showcase the important role that the accountancy profession has been playing in the economic and social development of our country.
Globalization has made the world one village, and the services of chartered accountant are also available globally without any boundaries. The Institute of Chartered Accountants of India is also devoting significant efforts towards global networking. The convention shall be attended by more than 3,000 delegates from around 40 countries. I would like to extend a warm welcome to the fraternity on behalf of ICAI to attend and participate in the first ever GLOPAC.
ICAI is geared up to welcome delegates from across the globe at the GLOPAC.
Thank you. Now let's come to this webinar. The program for this evening is as follows. We have two sessions for each 1 hour each. Topics are introduction and basics of estate planning. And second one is walkthrough of the CBIC audit manual and practical approach for CS. CP committee is work under the chairman of CA Purushottam Khandelwal sir and vice chairman of the Sri Gyanchandra Mishra. They are not both are not present due to some unavoidable work. Now it's time to introduce our first session speaker, CA Salin Patniji. Sir involved in the field of the academic since the age of 18 as a faculty at various institutions like Knowledge Academy, IQAS, Ideas and Career Launcher, etc. He has handled various subjects like legal aptitude, business and corporate laws, industrial and labor laws, etc. in several Indian courses like CA, CWA, CS, LLB, as well as international courses like CIMA and ACCA. He has also taken seminar on taxation and tax planning for various industrial and trade bodies and association of sectors such as textile, travel and tourism, banking, mutual fund, insurance and investment advisor, etc. Sir was co-chairman, Directors Committee 2019-20, member in 2017-18, 18-19, 2021, 21-22, 2023 of Ahmedabad branch of ICAI. He was convener Newsletter Committee in 2018 and 19, Ahmedabad branch of ICAI. He was member of GST Committee in 2017-18 to 19-20 of Ahmedabad branch of ICAI. He was visiting faculty at United World School of Business, Karnavati University, Ahmedabad for the course titled Contemporary Business Environment and Current Affairs in the Management Studies faculty. He had an opportunity to instruct and train young minds as visiting faculty at the Oakbrook Business School, Ahmedabad. With these words, sir, I welcome you. Now I would like to invite our first session speaker, C.A. Salin Patniji, for deliberate for this session. Over to you, sir.
Thank you so much, Deepa ji. Am I audible?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Thank you so much for the warm welcome. And I would like to extend my heartiest gratitude to the CPE committee, its chairman, Purushottam Khandelwal Saab, the vice chairman, the secretary, and you for having me on board to deliver this webinar on a very imperative and pertinent topic in today's time, introduction and basics of estate planning. It is an honor to be here, and although the time is honestly it is very short, a 1 hour time for dealing with a subject like this, especially in the esteemed audience of my fraternity members, seniors, and nonetheless, I would be trying my best to cover as much ground as possible over here. I'll be just sharing my screen. All right. So, members, thank you for participating in this webinar. The first thing that I would like to start with is that in these times where the entire society and the world, they just dealt with a major pandemic like COVID-19, the importance of a will, of preparing a will and of succession planning was realized by a lot of people during this turbulent time. Furthermore, later on, earlier also, in the case of family disputes of very prominent families of our country, like the Ambanis and Birlas, that is when this topic came to the fore about the importance of having a will, of having a succession planning, you would recall the case of Ambani's and Birla's, where, because of the lack of having a will or a proper succession planning in place, there was a huge dispute, and the whole country saw as both the Ambani brothers, they fought over the wealth that was created by their father, Mr. Dhirubhai Ambani. Again, in the case of the Birla family, the Priyamvada Birla group, it was a uh, very peculiar circumstances, one that has not been seen very often, where Mrs. Birla left at that time empire worth over 5,000 crores to a third person and a member of our CA fraternity at that. It was very controversial and hugely contested by rest of the members of Birla clan, and the case even reached the Supreme Court. However, in the end, since there was a valid will, it stood the test of time. It stood the test in the courts of law, and eventually the entire empire was handed over to the beneficiary mentioned in the will. So there's not enough I can say to stress on the importance of having a succession planning in place. So let me start with the basics, that what is the need of a will. The first thing we need to understand is that when you prepare a will, you you take the opportunity to decide of what happens with the wealth that you have created over your lifetime, for which so painstakingly you have accumulated all the financial resources, which you would obviously want to be used and to be distributed as per your own will. That can be done only if you prepare a will. Also, if we can see nowadays, because of the soaring prices of immovable properties, it becomes a major dispute about how to divide the wealth. Especially, in I come across during practice, I come across many cases where family members, since there was no will left, or no proper planning done in the lifetime of the deceased person, the family members had to share certain immovable properties, and because of different goals and objectives related to those immovable properties, there was a huge dispute between very close family members, to the extent that a lot of people felt, a lot of my clients have felt that इससे अच्छा कि पैसा नहीं होता तो ठीक रहता, because of such wealth there are disputes among family members, there is bad blood, brothers are not talking to each other anymore, brother and sisters are estranged. All these situations can be very easily dealt with if only planned properly and well in advance. Also, we need to understand that if a person dies intestate, intestate means without making a valid will, then the family will have to follow certain rules of succession, which are uh, guided by the respective laws applicable, succession laws applicable to the person who died, according to the religion that he professed at the time of his death. So even though the deceased person may have certain different ideas in mind, he might have wanted to share certain part of his wealth with his family members, certain with probably non-family members. Within family also, he had different ideas about what property, what resources, what investments and savings he wishes to give to different, uh, his dependents. But none of that matters. His idea, his will, his uh, preferences regarding division of his assets after his death will not matter, because he died intestate, that is without leaving a valid will behind him. Now, due to this, the personal laws based succession, various succession acts, they come into play. So the law says that Indian Succession Act It is the act, it is the law which governs the entire succession and inheritance system in the country. However, in case a person dies intestate, so for example, if a Hindu dies intestate, and by Hindu I mean uh, Hindu, Sikhs, Jains, Buddhist, if a person belonging to any of these religion, they die without leaving a will, then the Hindu Succession Act will be applicable. If a Muslim person dies without a will, then the personal Muslim personal law, also known as the Sharia, that comes into play. And as per these laws, Hindu Succession Act as well as the Muslim Sharia, it is a very complicated and at times not very ideal way of division of family as of the assets of the deceased person. So what is the reason that one should prepare a will? The first one would be that when a person dies without having made a will, there is so much confusion in the aftermath that whether he made a will or not, what did he leave in the will, because there is no paper in front of you. However, if he does make a will, then the only thing that needs to be sorted out is whether it is the last will of the deceased or not. Since there can be multiple wills of a person, however, the last will is the will that prevails above all the previous ones. Secondly, a will being a very personal document, it basically expresses the views, opinions, and feelings that the deceased had with other people. And accordingly, the devolution of property as per his own wishes, rather than the impersonal rules of inheritance laws, uh, which are there in the Hindu Succession Act or the Muslim Sharia law. Also, a lot of disputes can be resolved at the very outset if there is a clear demarcation and distribution of a person's property in his will. You would recall, some of you would recall the case of the late Mrs. Indira Gandhi and her daughter-in-law Maneka Gandhi, who were involved in a very long-standing litigation over the assets of late Sanjay Gandhi, because Mr. Sanjay Gandhi had not left behind a will, and there were court cases and dirty laundry being washed out in the open, because of which it also eventually resulted in estrangement between the mother-in-law and Maneka Gandhi. The fourth important reason why one should make a will is that while making a will, it can be ensured that the assets of the deceased are passed on to his dependents, let's say, for example, to his infant children, and that will be governed by or administered by a testamentary guardian, meaning that in the will you can mention that your children will have access to the wealth or to the assets that you leave behind. However, till such age as you may deem fit or till they are minor, these assets will be managed and administered by a testamentary guardian. Of course, it can be anybody. It can be the surviving spouse. It can be the one of the grandparents. It can be a very trusted and confidence holding friend who would be appointed as the testamentary guardian in the case. But then understand that this is only possible if a will is made in the first place. If you have not prepared a will and not appointed a testamentary guardian, then definitely the assets and your wealth might pass on to your children as per the succession acts applicable. However, the management of those assets can again be contested by the surviving spouse, by the grandparents, or anybody else. And only you should be the proper person to decide who is the right person to manage these assets for the benefit of your dependents, whether that be your spouse or your minor kids. Fifth, that when we talk about the laws of inheritance, such as the Hindu Succession Act or the Sharia law, there which come into play if a person dies intestate, then those laws do not take into consideration certain special situations which prevails in most of the families, in fact, that I have dealt with in my practice, such as probably there are uh, a few children, and the person who's writing the will, or the person or the deceased person, he he does not share a great relationship with one of the kids, or there is a spouse with whom that person is separated, or there's a spouse with whom he does not wishes that his wealth should be distributed to, or any part of his wealth should be distributed to after his death. Also, there can be situations where, let's say, there are two kids and one of them is mentally challenged or handicapped or not capable of making the right decisions financially. Now, all these type of situations are not taken care of by the Hindu Succession Act or the Muslim Sharia law. These can be taken, however, can be taken care of by writing a will and specifying what assets should go to whom. So let's say there's this kind of a situation which is there in your family or your client's family, where one of the kids is probably mentally handicapped or physically handicapped, and he is not capable enough to make the right financial decisions. In that case, you can definitely give a majority of your wealth to the other kid, or even you can bequeath it to the handicapped kid, with the additional responsibility on the right-minded kid that he will be handling the management or administration of that wealth, and he will be responsible of taking care of the sibling who is not capable enough. Such kind of special situations can be dealt with in a will. They will not be dealt with by the rules of succession given in the Succession Act. In fact, in Indian society, especially in a lot of communities like Punjabis, Marwadis, Gujaratis, we have a system where if there is a girl child and a male child, so at the time of the marriage of the girl child, the father already gives away a substantial amount for the upkeep of the girl, or unfortunately as dowry, or as gift to the girl or her in-laws. And the father does not have any intention of again parting with a portion of his wealth after his demise, which would go in the hands of the girl. That is a very clear idea among these communities, that वो लड़की को जो देना है, जो करना है, either वो at the time of wedding दे दिया जाता है, या फिर at the or during in the course of life of the father or the mother, वो दे दिया जाता है. ऐसा मोस्ट केसेस में मैंने देखा है फैमिलीज में, दैट अलग से अपनी रेस्ट ऑफ द वेल्थ में से कोई हिस्सा देने का कोई इंटेंशन नहीं होता है. However, if there is no will present, then as per Hindu Succession Act, equal share will go to the girl child as well as to the male child. Now, I have seen cases where a person is not comfortable with any portion of his wealth going to the girl child because he has distrust of his son-in-law, or probably is not too sure about the use of the wealth by the son-in-law. In that case, that person would obviously want कि कोई wealth का हिस्सा उनको ना जाए. But if that person dies intestate, then it will naturally, an equal share of the wealth will go to the girl child, and by practically the consequences to the son-in-law, as much as it would go to the male child and the spouse of the deceased person. So these kind of special situations can be taken care of by writing a will. Also, I have seen so many cases where the person whom I've consulted for uh, preparation of a will, that person is not happy with one of his children. Probably the child has not taken care of the parents appropriately, or in one case even there was a case of a wife who was adulterous, and so the husband was very determined that no part of his wealth should go to his wife. Now imagine the situation where uh, this person, he dies intestate, and his wealth will be shared between the unwanted son, or the son with whom he does not have share a good relations, as well as with the wife with whom he has not shared a good life. So these kind of situations will creep up if a person dies intestate. So please understand that uh, the situation that is created is such that if a person dies there are two situations. One, a person has prepared a will. In that case, a valid will be governed by the Indian Succession Act, which will give the rules regarding interpretation of the will, and the constitution constituents of a valid will, and the operation of the will, probate, and eventual distribution of assets. That is all given in the Indian Succession Act, the procedure. However, how and in what proportion the assets will be distributed, for that the will be sacrosanct as long as it is valid. It is a valid will. The other situation is that a person dies intestate without leaving a will. In that case, if he, at the time of his death, if he was a person who professed the religion of either Hinduism or Buddhism or Jainism or Sikhism, then Hindu Succession Act will be applicable. For Christians, again, there will be the Indian Succession Act which will be applicable. Parsis, they have a personal law of inheritance of their own. Muslims are governed by the Sharia law. Also remember that in Muslims, there are again two sects, the Shias and the Sunnis. Both have different certain differences when it comes to inheritance. I will very quickly just give you a small idea about what happens when a person dies intestate, and what does the we will be majorly dealing with the Hindu Succession Act over here. So what happens if the Hindu Succession Act becomes operable? So this is a little bit complicated, but very important to understand, because you will be in your practice facing these kind of cases where probably your clients will come to you looking for guidance on how legally the wealth of a deceased person should be divided. And in case of intestate death, the Hindu Succession Act gives this kind of a structure that first, if it is a Hindu male, who the deceased person is a Hindu male, the first claim on the assets of the deceased person lies with the mother, the spouse, and children. So howsoever many children they have. So let's assume a person has 4 children, and he has a surviving spouse and a surviving mother. So there will be total 6 claimants, and all of them will get equal share. If in the second case, in case of absence of any of not a single of the class 1 heirs are alive at the time of the demise of the person, then it goes to the class 2 heirs. Now the class 2 heirs are the father, siblings, living children's grandchildren, and siblings children, in that order. So let's assume that a person dies and he neither has a living mother or a spouse or any children, or children's widow, or children's children. Then in that case, the entire wealth will go to the father. In the case that his father has also predeceased him, then it will all go to the siblings of that person. तो जितने भी siblings होंगे उन सब में equal proportion में वो assets बटेंगे. If the siblings, if he does not have any siblings alive, then next it will go to the living children's grandchildren, and so on and so forth. The third claim goes with somebody called a class of heirs called the agnates. Basically, agnates are your relatives who can be defined as distant blood relatives of male lineage. इसका मतलब कि ऐसे relatives जो class 1 और class 2 में नहीं हैं, they are distant from that, but they can आपके और उनके बीच में जो connections हैं वो सारे males हैं. So for example, आप let's assume I die. In that case, my father's brother's son, my father's brother's son, he is an agnate. ठीक है? Because my father's brother's son और मेरे बीच में जितने भी connections हैं, so that is my father and his brother, they are both males. इस तरह से जो distant relatives होते हैं उनके पास आपके assets जाएंगे. And the fourth class is, अगर class 1, class 2 और agnates इनमें से कोई भी present नहीं है at the time of a person's demise, then it will go to those distant relatives who have a female lineage with you. मतलब आपकी mother's side से जो आपके साथ connected है. So as you can see, this is a very rather complicated line of inheritance. Again, this was in the case of Hindu male. Now, in the case of a Hindu female who dies intestate, the first claim is that of the sons, daughters, and the husband. These three will share the wealth or the assets of the Hindu female who has deceased in equal proportion. If none of them are alive, then the second claim is that of the heirs of the husband. So आपके husband जिंदा नहीं है, sons और daughters भी नहीं है, लेकिन husband के जो heirs होते हैं, as per again Hindu Succession Act, they become the second chain. They become the second link in the chain of inheritance. The third is, in the absence of the first and second claimants, mother and father of the deceased Hindu female, they have the right over the assets of the deceased Hindu female. Fourth is that the heirs of the father of the deceased Hindu female, and fifth is the heirs of the mother of the deceased Hindu female. If we talk about class 2 heirs of a Hindu male, then as you can see, the first entry is that of the father. So if class 1 heirs are not present, then the entire assets or wealth will go to the father alone. In case the father is also not alive, then entry 2, wherein son's daughter's son, son's daughter's daughter, and his siblings, that is his brothers and sisters, all of them will equally share the assets of the deceased Hindu male. Similarly, entry 3 में daughter's son, sons, daughter's son's daughter, daughter's daughter's son, daughter's daughter's daughter, and so on and so forth. But ये आपको entry wise देखना है, meaning that if class 1 heirs are not available, in case of a deceased Hindu male, then you go on to class 2, और class 2 में भी फिर preference entry wise है. So first preference goes to the father, entire wealth goes to the father. Entry 1 वाले father अगर available नहीं है तो entry 2, then entry 3, and so on and so forth. So coming back to this, I gave this small idea about intestate death because to help you understand why if anybody dies without a will, then the Hindu Succession Act, how it will distribute the assets of the deceased person and how complicated it can get, as well as how incapable it is of catering to certain special situations. Next, I would like to discuss with you certain terms which are commonly used for making a will. All of us practicing CAs, as well as even if you're not practicing in the area of succession planning, however, you must know these certain terms for, if nothing else, than preparation of your own will or the will of your family members. And even if you have access to other wills or you have already prepared a will, do check that will whether all these I will be discussing certain constituents of a will and certain special elements which must be there in a will. So do review it कि उसमें सब कुछ cover हो रहा है या नहीं and properly cover हो रहा है या नहीं. Certain commonly used terms which one should understand. The first being the testator. The testator is a person who makes the will. If it is a male person, if it is a male, it is called testator. If it is a female, she'll be known as a testatrix. Second is the testament. So testament basically means the will. Okay. A will, another word for a will is testament. Testamentary capacity. Testamentary capacity, this is something that something similar we have also read about and heard about in the Contract Act, where the mental capacity of the testator to make the will is known as the testamentary capacity. One must understand that at the time of making a will, the person who is making the will or who's getting the will made, he must have proper consciousness of his words and actions to constitute a good testamentary disposition. That means that to constitute a valid disposition of wealth through a testament, through a will, the testator must retain a degree of understanding to comprehend what he is doing. वो क्या बोल रहे हैं, क्या लिखवा रहे हैं, क्या कर रहे हैं, उसकी उन्हें proper understanding होनी जरूरी है. That is the reason why infants and mental patients do not have any testamentary capacity. Any will prepared by an infant or a testamentary or a mental patient, legally or medical insane person, that will not be considered a valid will. Next is a bequest. What is a bequest? Bequest is basically, it is the legacy or the grant that you give through a will. It is a gift by will. Please understand that the gift that you give in a will, the distribution of assets that you do through your will, those assets should be personal property. They cannot be ancestral property. आपके बाप दादा की जो जमीन आपके पास आई है, you do not have the right to give it away through a will. Even if you are giving it away to your own son or sons or daughters, still it is not a valid bequest. Why? Because एंसेस्ट्रल प्रॉपर्टी को रिलेटेड एक अलग लॉ है. एंसेस्ट्रल प्रॉपर्टी के रिलेटेड उसका पास ऑन होने का, ट्रांसमिशन का तरीका अलग से डिफाइन किया हुआ है. एंड यू हैव नो राइट ऑफ गिविंग अवे एनी वेल्थ विच इज नॉट योर ओन. अगर विल में आपने ऐसी कोई भी एसेट जो एंसेस्ट्रल है उसको दे दिया है, उसके बारे में मेंशन किया है, इफ यू हैव बिक्विथेड इट टू समबडी, देन दैट पर्टिकुलर clause or portion of the will be rendered invalid. Do remember, उसकी वजह से पूरा will invalid नहीं हो जाता है, लेकिन वो particular bequeathment of an asset which was not your own, उस particular clause को invalid माना जाएगा. Legatee or beneficiary is a person जिसको आपने bequeath किया है कुछ, जिसको आपने gift किया है कुछ, the beneficiary of your will, जिसको फायदा हो रहा है, किसी तरह का asset मिल रहा है from your will. Letters of administration. When a person who has executed a legally valid will, but he dies without naming an executor in the will, then any of the beneficiaries of the will, they can go to the court and apply for a grant of letters of administration. ये letters of administration में क्या होता है, that the court will examine the will, and accordingly, if the court is satisfied that the will is valid and the person who has approached the court, he is one of the beneficiaries in the will, then the court will grant letters of administration to the applicant, and accordingly it will, essentially it will give the right to distribute the assets as per the will to that particular person. What is a probate? This is a term which you might have come across when we talk about succession planning. So it is a certificate issued by the court on the executor, on the application of the executor appointed by a will, for obtaining the court stamp. ऐसा आप कह सकते हैं, कोर्ट का एक तरह का लाइसेंस दिया जाता है वो एग्जीक्यूटर को, that this will is valid. It is the official evidence of the for deceased person. In if where lie in either cities of Mumbai, Madras, or Delhi, then a probate of that is compulsory. This is a very old law. From the colonial past, this law is going on. Honestly, उसकी कोई खास practicality आज की तारीख में है नहीं, लेकिन वो चलता आ रहा है ऐसा का ऐसा in the Indian Succession Act. And therefore, इन 3 cities में से कोई भी city में अगर आपका वो will में कोई भी asset है जो इन 3 cities में से है, तो probate करवाना compulsory है. Otherwise, there is no compulsion regarding probate of a will. In Ajay Malhotra versus State, this was a case of Delhi High Court, where the court had held that the probate court is not competent to determine the question of title of the property, which is subject matter of the will. Neither will the probate court go into the question whether the property bequeathed by will was joint ancestral property or self-acquired property of testator. कहने का मतलब ये है कि जो प्रोबेट कोर्ट होती है वो कभी भी वो प्रॉपर्टी का टाइटल वैलिड है या नहीं, वो किसके नाम का टाइटल है, वेदर द टेस्टेटर जिसने विल बनाया था उस आदमी के पास वैलिड और गुड टाइटल था या नहीं था, इन चीजों के बारे में, या वेदर इट इज एन एंसेस्ट्रल प्रॉपर्टी और सेल्फ एक्वायर्ड प्रॉपर्टी, इन चीजों के बारे में कोई तरह का भी जजमेंट या टिप्पणी प्रोबेट कोर्ट को करने का कोई अधिकार नहीं है, ना ही वो करेगी. The probate court's only job is to study the will, ensure that it is a valid will, and accordingly उसमें जो नाम दे रखा है एग्जीक्यूटर का, to verify whether the person who has approached the court for probate, he is in fact the right executor as named in the will, and accordingly grant him the certificate of probate. This is the only job of a probate court. It will not go into the merits of the merits and finer details of the will. This brings us to one of the most important and essential elements of a will that all of us must be really careful about, which is the executor. An executor is the person that the testator, मतलब will बनाने वाला, chooses to name in the will and give him the power to administer and take care of the properties that are there on his demise and which he has willed away, जिसके बारे में, जिसके distribution के बारे में उन्होंने अपने डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन मैनेजमेंट को, उसके लिए जिस ट्रस्टवर्दी बंदे को वो अपॉइंट करते हैं उसको बोलते हैं एग्जीक्यूटर. Please remember that when you are preparing a will for a client or for yourself or one of your family members, make sure कि एक executor उसमें appointed हो. Also, that person जिसको आप executor appoint करवाते हैं, that person should be capable and willing to act as an executor, because honestly it is, at times it can be a thankless job. The executor might have to be in the situation of a mediator and an agony aunt, with all the relatives coming to him, bringing their problems, bringing their disputes to him, and he has to act like the proverbial judge in this case. So it may not be a very attractive position to be in. And आपने किसी को अपॉइंट कर दिया आपके खुद के विल में, या किसी फैमिली मेंबर के विल में, या कोई क्लाइंट किसी को अपॉइंट करता है, मेक श्योर यू एडवाइज द क्लाइंट दैट आप जिस आदमी को भी एग्जीक्यूटर अपॉइंट कर रहे हैं उसको उसकी आप कंसेंट एक बार ले लीजिए एंड एक्सप्लेन हिम his role as an executor and whether he is willing to take that responsibility or not. Also remember, anybody who is named as executor in a will is not bound to then act as an executor on the demise of the person and the will becoming operational. He may eventually also deny being taking the responsibility of an executor. Furthermore, I have seen cases, and in certain cases of HNI clients, I've whose wills I've prepared, एक से ज़्यादा executors भी appoint किए हैं, because the what happens in case the executor predeceases the testator. In that case, again the will becomes without a valid executor. So in that case, where the system that goes is either, if there are no disputes, तब तो ठीक है, distribution of assets हो जाता है. Even if a single person creates any dispute, then the matter goes to court, who will appoint an administrator, who is a third person, not related to the family, not related to the business, not a person of confidence. And there are a lot of malpractices that we have seen in the past happening in these kind of cases, where the third party administrator is appointed by court to preside over and to administer and manage a significant size of assets and wealth left behind by the deceased person. So therefore, at times it is advisable to appoint more than one executor who can function either simultaneously or either or, या फिर उसमें आप preference भी दे सकते हैं while preparing the will, that first executor will be this. In his absence, this second named person will become the executor. In your will, you may also fix the remuneration for the executor for his services that he is going to give, and that remuneration shall come out of the estate which is being bequeathed. ये आप एक clause डाल सकते हैं. Please remember, disabled persons, mentally or legally, medically or legally insane, or people cannot be appointed as executors. At times, a firm of CAs or solicitors are also appointed as executor, and it is absolutely valid. Even certain private banks that I know of, they also provide this service of acting as an executor of a will. They have a separate wing for separate department for this. It is also desirable that a person who is appointed as an executor, that person must be close to the family. He must be somebody who is respectable and who is looked upon by the family for advice and for sensible counsel, because that person may find himself in a situation where beneficiaries or even people who are left out of the will, they come to him and he has to mediate between them. So in this case, आपकी family के या friend circle के कोई influential person who is very well respected among the community and the family, if he is the executor, then that will be an ideal situation. In case the person in the will executor incapability in terms of either physical capacity or mental capacity, or has predeceased the testator, or even a case where the executor dies after the probate of the will, but before administering all the estates of the deceased. In all these cases, the court shall appoint an administrator at the instance or the application of one of the beneficiaries, like I have discussed previously. The second most important element or factor of a will that all of us must take care of is the witness, the attesting of the will. For a valid execution of a will, the testator, matlab will banane wala, has to sign the will or affix his thumbprint on the will in presence of at least two witnesses. At times, if a person is incapable of signing or even uh, putting his thumb, maybe he's bedridden, he's on his deathbed, or he's physically handicapped, in that case, also a will is possible whereby he dictates his wishes, a will is prepared, and in his uh, instead of him, he instructs another person to sign that will. However, that should also happen in the presence of a witness. Please understand that ये attesting वाला जो phase है, वो किस तरह से ideally carry out होना चाहिए. First element is that it has to be attested by two or more witnesses, every valid will. Okay. Second, each of these witnesses must have seen the testator sign or affix his mark to the will. मतलब हर विटनेस ने अपनी आंखों से विल बनाने वाले को उस विल पे अपना साइन लगाते हुए या थंबप्रिंट लगाते हुए, या फिर उसने ऐसे आदमी को देखा है जो विल बनाने वाले के इंस्ट्रक्शन पे साइन कर रहा है. In short, he should be a witness to the consent of the testator to the document prepared, to the will that is prepared. Also understand it is not necessary कि दोनों witnesses एक साथ एक ही कमरे में मौजूद हो, एक ही दिन पे मौजूद हो, ये भी जरूरी नहीं है. So let me give you a hypothetical situation where a person is on his deathbed. He is incapable of signing or even putting his thumb, but he can speak and he gives instructions to the doctor in attendance to prepare a will on a paper. Us paper pe he gives the instructions that now doctor, please apply your sign on that under my instruction, after having understood the contents of the will and having probably seen it. ये जो डॉक्टर उस पे साइन कर रहा है, ये साइन डॉक्टर का होना चाहिए इन द प्रेजेंस ऑफ आइदर बोथ द विटनेसेस और एटलीस्ट वन विटनेस. सेकंड, वो डॉक्टर सपोज उस टाइम पे कोई फ्रेंड आए हुए हैं उस पेशेंट के, उनके प्रेजेंस में उस डॉक्टर ने अंडर द इंस्ट्रक्शन ऑफ द पेशेंट साइन किया ऑन द विल. दैट फ्रेंड लेफ्ट, अनदर रिलेटिव केम in his as his witness, in his witness the doctor again signs the testament. So basically both the witnesses at different points of time, not being in the same room, but both witnessed the signing of the will by the doctor on the instruction of the patient who was incapable of signing or putting his fingerprint on the will himself. The main point is that witness इसका काम क्या है, ये चीज की ये चीज को witness करना that उस document पे either by his own self the testator is signing the will without any undue influence, without any coercion, in proper state of mind उन्होंने sign किया है, and वो एक साथ होने जरूरी नहीं है उस चीज के लिए. Also understand that the witnesses have to witness only the signature wala part. They don't have to be a witness to the contents of the will. So if you are getting somebody as witness to the will, it is not necessary कि उसको आप एक्सेस दें पूरे विल की, उसको पढ़ने दें वो विल. आप विल बकायदा कवर कर सकते हैं और सिर्फ आप साइन कर रहे हो उस विल पे इन हिज प्रेजेंस, एंड देन यू रिक्वेस्ट हिम टू पुट हिज साइन एज अ विटनेस. दैट इज एब्सोल्युटली वैलिड. ही नीड नॉट नो इवन अ सिंगल डिटेल ऑफ द विल, और आपने कौन सी चीज किसको दी या किसको नहीं दी, ऐसा कुछ भी उसके सामने जाहिर करने की जरूरत नहीं है. Now there are certain special situations just that happened in the past and that became subject to court matters, which I've covered. Some of them I've covered over here. That when a will was made subject matter of a legal issue, of a legal case, at that time, the Kerala High Court, in the case of Anthoniamal versus Appavu, it had given the judgment that examination of independent witnesses and non-examination of independent witnesses and non-production of original will establish that the will has not been duly proved. What basically उस matter में ऐसा था that the court said that कोई भी will का genuineness and validity prove करने के लिए in a court of law जरूरी है कि जो witnesses थे, independent witnesses, उनको एग्जामिन किया जाए. अगर उनको एग्जामिन नहीं कर रहे हैं या फिर ओरिजिनल विल प्रोड्यूस नहीं हो रही है, तो फिर उस विल को वैलिड नहीं माना जा सकता है. Also, Supreme Court, in the case of Hazari Baradari and versus Lokesh Datta, it had given the judgment that if the testator had used different pen than the pen that was used by the attesting witness, the will cannot be disbelieved on this ground alone. You know, during our practice, a lot of people have these myths that अलग-अलग पेन से साइन होगा, दिख जाएगा कि अलग पेन है, तो उससे कोई वैलिडिटी में फर्क पड़ता है, उससे कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ता है. That does not matter at all. Also understand that mere registration of will with the आपके जो भी आसपास SRO हैं, उनके यहाँ पे आप रजिस्टर करवा देते हो will, उससे will valid नहीं हो जाता है. In the case of Tajinder Singh versus Ram Murthy, Himachal Pradesh High Court had given this judgment that even though registered था will, लेकिन बहुत सारे discrepancies थे in the statements of different witnesses to the will produced by the defendants. Even though registrar का उस पे mark था, उसका sign था, लेकिन registrar का कोई examination नहीं हुआ था. And अगर registrar का examination नहीं हुआ है, तो just because it is a registered will does not make it valid. So the point is that witnesses, registrar, executor, these are the people who will be examined and will be questioned by the court of law when a question about the validity of the will arises and becomes a subject matter of a legal dispute. The next important terminology that one must know is trustee. Of course, you understand that a person who holds or manages property for the benefit of others is known as a trustee. Why this is important when we talk about wills and succession planning is because a trustee at times in a will, some people even create trusts through a will. Some people even give their properties or their wealth, they bequeath it to some beneficiary. However, they appoint a trustee to manage and administer that particular property or that asset till such time as, for example, if there's a minor child, तो वो minor जब तक major हो जाए या probably attains the age of 25 when he becomes smart and educated enough to handle and take financial decisions, उस time तक एक trustee appoint कर देते हैं through a will. Interstate we have already discussed. Laws of inheritance we discussed in detail. Residuary estate. Now, what is a residuary estate? The balance property of a deceased person after paying off all his debts, funeral expenses, administration expenses, executors remuneration, and after distributing all the assets as mentioned in the will. ये सब कुछ होने के बाद भी अगर कोई ऐसे एसेट्स रह जाते हैं जिसका या तो मेंशन नहीं था इन द विल या फिर वो सरप्लस एसेट्स थे, तो इस तरह के जो रेजिड्यूरी एस्टेट्स हैं, दे विल बी इनहेरिटेड बाय द टेस्टेटर्स लीगल heirs in accordance with the laws of inheritance applicable to them. So understand that even though कोई किसी ने will बनाई है, if he has not dealt with all the assets which are present or which are to his name at the time of his demise, तो उस केस में ये सारे assets इनमें से कुछ तो बढ़ जाएंगे जो विल में लिखा है उस हिसाब से, जिसको जो बटना चाहिए वो उधर बढ़ जाएगा, डेट्स क्लियर हो जाएंगे, एक्सपेंसेस पे ऑफ हो जाएंगे, और फिर जो बचेगा वो एज पर एप्लीकेबल सक्सेशन लॉज के मुताबिक डिस्ट्रीब्यूट होगा. और कौन से सक्सेशन लॉ? द सक्सेशन लॉ ऑन द बेस ऑफ द रिलीजन प्रोफेस्ड बाय द टेस्टेटर एट द टाइम ऑफ हिज डेथ. मतलब अगर वो एट द टाइम ऑफ हिज डेथ हिंदू धर्म निभाता था तो एज पर हिंदू सक्सेशन एक्ट, इफ एट द टाइम ऑफ हिज डेथ वो मुस्लिम धर्म निभाता था तो एज पर शरिया लॉ. Why I have repeated these terms again and again, that professed at the time of his death, this is to help you understand that a person may be born a Muslim, but let's say that at the time of his death he professed the Hindu religion or he professed Sikhism, or vice versa, that a person who was born Hindu, let's say there's a girl who's born Hindu, she married into a Muslim family, and till her death she professed Islam as a religion, then Sharia law will be applicable. Do understand that if a girl who marries into a Hindu girl marrying into a Muslim family but not adopting the Muslim religion or not practicing and professing Muslim religion, उसके ऊपर Hindu law ही लगेगा. So everything rests on what the person professes or practices at the time of death, irrespective that what they were born as, which family or which religion they were married in. Now I have certain I've mentioned certain details over here which are very basic components of a will. I will have to rush through them really fast. I can see it's 4 o'clock already. So the first is obviously the testator details. Testator की सारी आप name, age, address ये सब mention properly करिए while preparing a will. Next is the legal declaration, in which a living person declares his desires or intentions. Please understand that आपका जो will आप बनाते हैं, that is only to deal with your assets or liabilities after your demise. At the time when you're alive, अगर आप कोई आपके assets या liabilities को देना चाहते हैं, किसी को gift करना चाहते हैं, then will is not the right instrument for them. Will operational भी नहीं होता है till a person dies, and after death ही जो उसके assets बचते हैं उसके लिए ही will operational रहता है. A will is not an agreement or contract or settlement. So please understand that for this reason, the beneficiaries of a will should not be parties to the will. Meaning that कभी भी पहला इसका implication ये है that none of the beneficiaries should be a witness. Please remember, this is the most basic mistakes that I have seen people committing, that one of the beneficiaries ही उसका witness बन जाता है, पूरा का पूरा will void ab initio माना जाता है, invalid माना जाता है. Please take care of that. Also, since it is a legal declaration, any illegal declaration in a will, either by way of ulterior objective or in some other way, will not be considered as a will. तो ऐसा कोई भी declaration आप देते हैं जो by under any law of the land is illegal, that will not be, that will render that particular part of the will as invalid. Intention of the testator has to be clearly defined. जो भी टेस्टेटर विल बनाने वाला जो इस भी तरह से डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन अपनी वेल्थ का करना, अपने एसेट्स का करना चाहता है, वो बहुत क्लियर कट मैनर में लिखिए. इट डज नॉट हैव टू बी इन एनी पर्टिकुलर लीगलीज, कोई पर्टिकुलर फैंसी लीगल टर्मिनोलॉजी होनी जरूरी बिल्कुल भी नहीं है. बहुत सिंपल मैनर में भी अगर लिख दिया जाता है कि मेरा XYZ घर है, इस एड्रेस पे, ये घर मैं चाहता हूं कि मेरे आफ्टर माय डेथ इट गोज टू माय सन. विद सन उसका नाम, प्रॉपर नेम उसका लिख दिया आपने. दैट्स इट. दैट इज अ परफेक्टली वैलिड bequeathment, and it also expresses the intention of the testator very clearly. In the uh, effort or with the intention of making it sound legally fancy, आप कोई भी ऐसा वर्ड्स या ऐसे फ्रेजेस यूज मत करिए जिससे कि वेगनेस आ जाए विल में. The testator also understand her bequeathment, everything that is being distributed through a will, it should be with respect to his or her own property. It should not uh, be with respect to anybody else's property. A husband cannot make a will, make a bequeathment for the property that is of his wife. इवन दो उनको ऐसा लगता होगा कि ये मेरी प्रॉपर्टी है, लेकिन अगर वाइफ का टाइटल है उस पे तो वो वाइफ की है. उसके बारे में अगर वो अपनी विल में, हस्बैंड अपनी विल में लिख देता है कि हमारा ये घर है, हम इसको दे देते हैं, या मेरा ये घर है और मैं अपने बेटी को देना चाहता हूँ, इट विल बी अ इनवैलिड bequeathment because he can deal with only his property in the will. Ancestral property, somebody else's property, property that does not exist at the time of the death, इनमें से कोई भी चीज के साथ वो डील करेंगे तो वो इनवैलिड माना जाता है. बेनिफिशियरी की प्रॉपर डिटेल्स लिखिए, आप किसको क्या दे रहे हैं, जिसको भी दे रहे हैं उसका बहुत क्लियर कट नाम, एंड इफ पॉसिबल उसका किसी तरीके का एड्रेस या क्लियरली आइडेंटिफाई हो सके वो पर्सन, स्पेशली इफ दैट पर्सन इज अ नॉन फैमिली मेंबर. फैमिली मेंबर तो बहुत इजीली आइडेंटिफाई हो जाते हैं. नॉन फैमिली मेंबर हैं जिनको कई बार हो सकता है that there can be issues in identifying that person, identification by the court of law. तो please make sure that वो बहुत clearly details दी गई हो. Whatever the desires are that need to be carried after into effect after his or her death must be clearly stated. गार्डियन अपॉइंट करना है माइनर्स का, तो उसके बारे में बहुत क्लियरली आप विल में लिखिए. Who will take care of the minor's property till the minor attains majority or 21, 25, whatever you deem fit as the age when the minor should be handed over the reins over the assets or properties. Executor of the will, we have already discussed how important it is. Signature and date, बहुत clearly date करिएगा, signed by the testator at the place just below the document. वैसा कोई लीगल रिक्वायरमेंट नहीं है कि विल का हर एक पेज साइन होना चाहिए. However, it is my personal suggestion that make sure that each page of the will is signed. That will help to ward off certain legal issues in the future if ever कोई इस चीज पे dispute खड़ा होता है कि पेपर चेंज कर दिया गया है ऐसा कुछ. Now there are different types of wills also that I wish to cover, but looking to the time, I would rather cover something more important. Uh, एक एक बहुत बेसिक चीज, there are certain facts and myths related to wills that I wish to clarify over here. The first being that a will must be drafted on a stamp paper. Absolutely unnecessary. It can be handwritten on a plain paper, on a legal size paper, on an A4 paper, on a green paper, blue paper, white paper, कुछ भी होगा, doesn't matter. In fact, आप टिश्यू पेपर पे भी अगर लिख देते हैं तो that is also valid. It can be a valid will if done in the proper manner. There is no such rule in Indian Succession Act. that,
Recording in
that I am
progress.
writing this will with complete consciousness and out of my free will without any coercion, uh, undue influence, fraud, misrepresentation, without any force, out of my own free will. इस तरह का जो terminology आपको last में लिखनी है, वो एक लिखी हुई होती है, that is sufficient to make it a proper will. A will is effective only after a person's death, like I told before that during the lifetime अगर आपको कोई भी decisions लेने हैं तो will is not the right instrument for that. Will can very well exclude all your immediate relatives, your blood relatives, your spouse, children, anybody, and it can make beneficiaries out of anybody. In fact, it can make beneficiary even out of non-natural person. So if there is a trust or there is some company or there is some organization to whom you wish to donate certain part of your wealth or even the entire wealth, even that is fine. ऐसा कुछ भी नहीं होता है कि वाइफ को और चाइल्ड को दिया नहीं और सब कुछ किसी ट्रस्ट के नाम पे छोड़ गए तो लॉ विल सपोर्ट दैट. नो, लॉ इज एब्सोल्युटली फाइन. आपका पैसा है, आपके एसेट्स हैं, आपकी जो मर्जी है जिसको चाहे आप दे सकते हैं एज लॉन्ग एज इट इज योर एसेट्स. इट लास्ट विल जो होती है वो हमेशा प्रिवेल करती है. दैट इज व्हाई इट इज मैंडेटरी दैट ईच विल बी डेटेड इफ देयर आर मोर देन वन विल्स. Even if there is a single will, it is mandatory that a date should be properly mentioned over there. Will versus nomination का एक बहुत लंबा चलता हुआ डिबेट है. इस पे सैकड़ों केसेस हुए हैं at various forums across India. Even internationally, it is a very hotly debated topic. We will just cover in 2 minutes इसके बारे में डिटेल में, but for the timing, please understand that will prevails over nomination with respects to all assets except one. कौन सा अभी अपन डिस्कस करते हैं. 2 married women cannot make wills. ऐसा भी लोगों को myth है. There's nothing like that. Anybody, any person can make a will except infants and mentally insane or mentally challenged people who do not have testamentary capacity. उसके अलावा हर कोई person will बना सकता है. And at least 2 witnesses are required. If there are not 2 witness, एक ही witness या एक भी witness नहीं है, it is of no use. I have, for your benefit, I've mentioned there are certain pointers that you should keep in mind while preparing a will. Due to paucity of time, we are not able to take up all of that. But since this PPT will be shared with you, please go through them whenever time permits or at the time of preparing a will or advising your client. बहुत short में काफी सारी important topics and issues cover करने की कोशिश करी है यहाँ पे. And interstate distribution of assets we have already discussed. Yes. Nomination versus legal heir. Which one, nomination versus will में which will prevail? It's a very vast topic. Earlier बहुत इस पे चर्चा हुई हुई है, लेकिन now we have kind of reached finality. The law is settled more or less on this. Supreme Court has given decisions on various issues. So in this case, there's a list of various types of assets and what will prevail, whether nomination will prevail or the whatever is given in the will prevail. So let's assume that there's a provident fund or employee provident fund. Compulsorily आपसे आजकल तो आप खुलवाते हैं इनमें से कोई भी accounts तो nominee mention करवाया जाता है. Even deposits FDs में भी वो mention करवाते हैं. Shares में आपके demat account में your broker will now compulsorily get it mentioned. In case नहीं है mentioned तो even recently there was a deadline of mentioning nominee in your demat account. So all of these kind of assets, mutual funds, shares of cooperative society, ये सारे के सारे assets में आपने nominee mention किया होगा, लेकिन अगर will में आपने ये किसी और को bequeath कर दी, so for example, you have assigned the balance of your PPF or FDs or EPF to some person. Let's say you have assigned them to your children एंड नॉमिनी आपने जब ये खुलवाए थे ईपीएफ पीपीएफ, तब शायद आपके बच्चे नहीं थे, या फिर उस टाइम पे आपने स्पाउस का नाम लिख दिया था, बट विल में अगर आज आपने अपने बच्चों के नाम पे ये लिख दिया है, तो दिस विल गो टू द किड्स डू हैव द फाइनल राइट ओवर इट. Nomination will only serve as a stand-in arrangement. वो टेम्पररी अरेंजमेंट है जिससे कि ये ईपीएफओ ऑफिस हो गया या पीपीएफ एडमिनिस्टर करने वाला आपका बैंक हो गया, एफडी के लिए बैंक हो गया, या शेयर्स के लिए आपका ब्रोकर या डिपॉजिटरी है, उन लोगों को ईज करने के लिए प्रोसीजरली ये नॉमिनेशन का सिस्टम अब यूजफुल रहा है. और इससे कुछ भी अब डिसाइड नहीं होता दैट अल्टीमेट राइट ओवर दैट पर्टिकुलर एसेट किसका है. वो आपके विल से डिसाइड होगा, या फिर इवन इफ आपकी इंटरस्टेट डेथ हुई है, विल नहीं बनाया, तो एज पर सक्सेशन एक्ट, एप्लीकेबल सक्सेशन एक्ट जो फाइनल होता है दैट इस पर्सन के इतने लीगल एड्स हैं, उनको ही जाने वाला है, इररिस्पेक्टिव आपने नॉमिनेशन क्या लिख दिया. नॉमिनेशन का काम सिर्फ इतना रहेगा कि बैंक अपने एफडी को उस आदमी को हैंड ओवर करके फ्री हो जाएगा, लेकिन लीगली दैट पर्सन कैन नॉट यूज दैट मनी. दैट पर्सन इज जस्ट होल्डिंग इट इन द सिचुएशन ऑफ, यू कैन से, अ ट्रस्टी, कि वो संभाल के रखना है. जिस दिन लीगल एयर खड़ा होता है और उनसे आके मांगता है वो पैसा, उन्हें हैंड ओवर करना ही पड़ेगा. सेम विद शेयर्स, पीपीएफ, ईपीएफ, म्यूचुअल फंड्स, शेयर्स ऑफ कोऑपरेटिव सोसाइटी. आपकी सोसाइटी में आपका घर है, उस घर में जो उसका शेयर सर्टिफिकेट है उसमें आपका नाम है, नॉमिनी में सोसाइटी ने किसी ना किसी का नाम डलवाया, अपने वाइफ का डाल दिया, लेकिन आपने इन योर विल यू हैव गिवन इट अवे टू योर चिल्ड्रन. तो सोसाइटी के लिए मैं समझ सकता हूँ दैट सोसाइटी विल, व्हेन इट कम्स टू चेंज ऑफ द पर्सन इन द शेयर सर्टिफिकेट, तो वो एक बार आपके मदर का नाम लिख देंगे, लेकिन जस्ट बिकॉज नाम मदर का आ गया एज अ नॉमिनी के बेस पे, उनका नहीं हो जाएगा वो प्रॉपर्टी. वो प्रॉपर्टी वो बच्चों की ही होती है, और वो इवेंचुअली मदर कैन होल्ड इट एज ट्रस्टी इफ द चिल्ड्रन, इफ एंड व्हेनेवर द चिल्ड्रन रेज अ क्लेम ऑन इट, शी विल हैव टू हैंड ओवर द प्रॉपर्टी टू द चिल्ड्रन. द ओनली exception to this general rule of nominee versus legal heir, जिसमें legal heir will prevail, उसमें only exception is life insurance. ये भी 2015 में एक अमेंडमेंट आया था इंश्योरेंस का, इंश्योरेंस एक्ट का, आईडा का. उसके बाद ये चीज में फाइनलिटी आई दैट नॉमिनी वर्सेस लीगल एयर में नॉमिनी प्रिवेल करता है एज लॉन्ग एज it is the beneficial nominees. Now, what is beneficial nominees? Beneficial nominees की definition ऐसा है कि a person's immediate family, that is his spouse, his parents and his children. इतने लोग, इतने में से अगर किसी का नाम एज नॉमिनी दे रखा है, तो लाइफ इंश्योरेंस का सारे पैसे का एब्सोल्यूट राइट उस पर्सन का रहेगा. However, इनके अलावा, so let's assume I have in my life insurance made my sister as nominee. She is not considered a beneficial nominee, and therefore the life insurance का पैसा हो सकता है उसके अकाउंट में जाए, since she has been made a nominee by me. However, उस पे राइट किसका रहेगा? लीगल एड्स का. लीगल एड्स कौन है? आइदर बाय विल जिसके नाम पे लिख दिया, या फिर इंटरस्टेट डेथ के केस में सक्सेशन एक्ट के थ्रू जो लीगल एड्स डिटरमाइन होते हैं, उनका उस पे अधिकार होगा. ऑन द अदर साइड, अदर हैंड, अगेन थोड़ा एक्सप्लेन करूं तो, इन केस मेरी लाइफ इंश्योरेंस में मैंने अपनी वाइफ को नॉमिनी बनाया है, तो इन दैट केस, सिंस शी इज अ बेनिफिशियल नॉमिनी, एंड उसके बाद इंटरस्टेट मेरी डेथ हो गई, सो डेफिनेटली एज पर हिंदू सक्सेशन एक्ट, the wealth on my demise has to be shared equally between my mother, my wife and my kids. In spite of that, since it was my wife who is the nominee and she is a beneficial nominee by definition, सारा पैसा अकेली मेरी वाइफ को जाएगा. Other than this, there are a lot of FAQs, बहुत commonly asked questions, frequently asked questions, जो सबके दिमाग में उठते हैं, which you may have faced from time to time. Please go through them whenever convenient. A lot of things I've tried to answer very precisely so that it gives you an immediate idea about the issue. With this, I think it's time. It's 4:20 already. मैंने वैसे भी थोड़ा ज़्यादा time ले लिया हिरेन भाई का. So I would like to end my presentation over here. And thank you everybody for your patient listening and for participating in this webinar. I hope I was able to do some justice to the topic, although it is vast. And there are so many things that should be covered and that I would have liked to cover. Probably next time again, I will get this opportunity to share all this information with you. And hopefully I've been able to at least deliver certain basics of preparation of a will, importance of will, intestate death and testamentary death. The basic concepts have been covered, and this will help you in preparing. And it is my personal request that at least your own will you should prepare as a professional. It is your responsibility towards your family to prepare a proper will. And please, you're of course always welcome to reach out to me in case any help is needed. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Deepa ma'am, and the entire CPE committee for this opportunity.
Thank you, sir. If any person die who have lots of property without making will, create lots of dispute. Sir, you have given the example of the Ambani and Birla, and CA are the doctors of the wealth. So what advice should be given? What is the role of CA and what care should be taken? That is well explained by you very minutely. On behalf of the entire CPE committee and audience, I would like to extend our heartfelt gratitude to you for enlightened session on the topic of introduction and basic of the estate planning. Sir, your extensive knowledge and experience in this topic guide us through the fundamental of this complex subject. Sir, it was not only informative but also engaging, and presentation was very much helpful. Sir, thank you so much. Now it's time to move forward to the second session. Our second session topic is walkthrough of the CBI audit manual and practical approach of CA. For that, we have CA Hiren Pathak. Now let me introduce CA Hiren Pathak, sir. Sir possesses a comprehensive understanding of the legal and financial aspect of the taxation. He has further advised his knowledge and skill by obtaining the DISA qualification from the ICAI. Regarding his contribution to the field, CA Hiren Pathak was appointed as a co-opted member of the Indirect Committee at ICAI New Delhi for the year 2018-19. He has delivered insightful lectures on GST at various professional firms. With this word, I welcome you, sir. Now, I would like to invite you to deliberate the session. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Lisa ma'am. At the outset, I would like to thank Chairman of the CPE Committee, Purushottam Khandelwalji, along with Vice Chairman Misraji, as well as the moderator of the session. It was very wonderful session by my very good dear friend, as well as my co-speaker Salim. To my dear participants, if you can interlink both the topic, you want to have a healthy will, then you have to save yourself from huge GST liability, and that GST liability can only be saved if you have very successful completion of GST assessment. So let me share my screen for the topic of the day. Basically, I have tried to cover two parts. Just hold on. Yes, basically I tried to cover two parts. One part is regarding the walkthrough of the CBIC GST audit manual, where we will see that what is the source guidance for the department officer, department auditor to verify your GST compliance. And second is for our dear members who are practicing in GST, whether be it a compliance or be it their GST review at client's end, what sort of practical approach they would take to, safeguard the prospective liability of their clients. So looking to the limitation of time, I have tried to cover only relevant topic of both the area. where I will try to stick to only practical aspect instead of going through the procedural aspect. So we start with the first CBIC GST audit manual. So practically, we all know that there is one All India GST Common Audit Manual is released by CBIC in 2023. Before that also, CBIC has come out with GST Audit Manual in 2019. And this 2023 audit manual is compiled from various sources. You can see in my screen that they have taken reference from many audit manual, because each state is having their own GST audit manual and their SOPs. Now, they try to compile all the manuals and SOPs, and they want to give one source document, which would be, you can say Gita for the GST auditor, who will verify that when they come for GST assessment. So what is included in this GST audit manual, that I try to summarize. Basically, these audit manual comprise of more than 250 pages, but I will discuss about the practical aspect thereof. Before jumping to the GST audit manual, we will discuss certain legal provision behind GST audit. We are not going into depth because you all know there what are the legal provision, but for conceptual clarity and linking what I am discussing, we are discussing certain legal provision. First is meaning of GST audit. See, audit has been defined under GST Act under section 2 subsection 13, where it says that it is a detailed examination of records, returns, and other documents. Either that can be maintained or that can be furnished by the taxable person under this rule, or it can be any other rule also. So it may possible that you have furnished certain documents under labor law. So your employment and certain other details are being said with under different statute. So they can take the reference for the same. So that is a detailed examination of certain documents and records that you are furnishing. And what they want to verify, basically they want to verify in principally 5 things. First is whether you have declared correct turnover, you have correctly paid the tax, refund that you have claimed is correct, and input tax credit that you have availed is correct, and obviously the compliance. So broadly, these five category will cover everything. You cannot escape anything because audit definition is so much large. There are 3 types of GST audits are mentioned under GST Act. First is audit by tax authority. One another is special audit, where as per the need, the department is taking the help of chartered accountants to carry out certain audits, but that is very limited aspect. And last is turnover based audit that we used to. We chartered accountant fraternity and CMS are used to do audit where we have to certify GSTR 9C. But now that is no longer in force, and GSTR 9C, which is the reconciliation statement, is to be certified on a self-certification basis by the taxpayer himself. So what this GST audit manual is focusing only for GST audit by the tax authority. One another provision which you can refer, that is principal provision of section 65, that commissioner has the power to undertake audit of any registered person. There is no such limit mentioned in the section that beyond XYZ turnover only person can be audited. It is not like that. They have their own risk parameters. Based on that, they will identify. We will see that what sort of risk parameters has been provided. Plus, subsection 2 mentioned that they can audit either at the place of your business, or they can do audit in their office only as per the convenience of the officer. And last sub-clause says that they need to provide 15 working days before they start the GST audit. What documents basically they will verify, and what documents one should provide to tax authorities. That is also mentioned over here. So these all are the basic documents that they are demanding, and many of my colleagues would have experience also that over and above that there are many requirement as far as the documents are concerned, but principally they are asking the relevant document as mentioned under section 71(2). So basically, what is the purpose of the audit? Now coming to the apart from the legal provision, we will jump to the GST audit manual, where the objective has been mentioned that it is to measure the level of the compliance of the taxpayer. And these audit have a two effect. One is preventive effect and one is deterrent effect. Why preventive effect? Because it endangered the person to and to have the habit of not evading the tax, because someone will or someone there he is under the presumption that GST officer is going to audit my books of account and my return filing, so they will not evade the tax due to the fear of detection. And one is the deterrent effect. Those who have already have done certain wrongdoers, such kind of wrongdoers will have a deterrent effect. And these are the broad principles which GST audit manual is saying that first they adhere to the risk factor. We will see that what are the risk factors and what are the risk parameters based on which the taxpayer can be covered under GST audit. Second, they have also categorically mentioned that GST officer need to be consistent with the department circular. They have to follow the advice and circular, whatever mentioned the advisory that has been produced by the circulars. They will pre-plan the audit, and based on their systematic planning of the audit has been allocated to different audit commissionerate, and they prepare a team and they allocate allocation of the taxpayer should be accordingly carried out. So these all are the principles. I will share my screen. You can have a look at your convenient time. Just one of the point that CBIC audit manual general guidelines is saying that it is for department audit. They are saying that while conducting the audit, the auditors are required to keep in view the prevalent trade practice, the economic realities, as also the industry and business environment in which the registered person operates. And therefore, the auditor should take the balanced and rational approach. This is what that has been mentioned in GST audit manual. So if we see the brief process of GST audit by the department, first they will create a team depending on the manpower, the registered taxpayer. They prepare an audit team. They schedule the audit based on the risk assessment. Allocation of the taxpayer is being identified, and as per the time and as per the convenience of the team, they will intimate the audit to they will intimate a registered person that they are going to conduct GST audit. Once the intimation has been forwarded, the details has been asked from them. They will get the data from the registered taxpayer. They will review it. First review would be on a desk review. That is, they will verify the documents on their own, sitting in their office only. And then based on the data, they will prepare the audit plan, that what sort of area that is required in-depth verification. And then they will come to your place, or they will ask further information. They will assess the compliance level and issue audit para if any. In case they have a certain audit paras, they will issue that, and they prepare a draft report based on the reply and communication from your side. And such draft report will be issued to the monitoring committee meeting that they are regularly uploading various paras. So one thing you will know that this process is basically carried out at all the commissionerate level. So I have an idea that such kind of monitoring committee meeting will get the para from all over the area. So it may possible that certain trade practices are going on at certain level of, let's say, in Maharashtra, and such kind of paras are being identified at audit commissionerate at Maharashtra. So they will pass on such paras to other state also and verify whether that particular industry is being following such kind of compliance or not. So such a centralized system they are following. Okay, so there are certain instruction is given as far as the plan when the actual initiation of audit is being carried out. It says that obviously the data is required by the tax auditor, that is the officer, is in a very large quantum. So it is obviously inconvenience for the both end, whether from the departmental officer end also and as well as the auditee end also, to prepare and provide the data in a one go. So they have instructed that you will ask the data on a staggered manner and not ask the data on a one go. As and when they are providing the data, you are free to verify that particular portion, and as and when the portion gets completed, you can ask for the other data. Certain important points that I have mentioned over here: when the actual audit is being initiated at your end, your client's end, then you can have a you can have a look at that such kind of para also. These are the instruction to the department officer, which says that avoid making repeated requests for the information. We all have faced this kind of issue where even though you have provided the details, they are asking the details again and again. So they have been instructed that you should not ask the details repeatedly. You have to preserve the data that has been provided to you, and most importantly, the data which is readily available for the department officer only, like they can download the GST returns, etc., from their GST portal only. So they should not ask for such kind of data from you. And similarly, original copies should not be asked for. And whenever the samples are drawn, the base for taking the sample should be intimated. Now, there are certain circumstances other than the normal scenario where audit is being conducted or not. The guidelines for the same has been mentioned over here. First scenario is that auditee is not found, auditee is not in existence. So in such case, what will be the option available with the department officer? So such case, the department officer or auditor will transfer this case to jurisdiction GST officer or the enforcement wing, because the taxpayer is at all not in existence. Second is the case which is generally happening, that GST number or the registration certificate of the particular taxpayer is cancelled. Let's say GST number has been obtained in 2017, the same has been cancelled in 2019. Now the department officer is want to conduct the audit in 2020, but the GST number is already cancelled. So in such case, since if you refer the legal provision, it says that the audit is being conducted for the registered taxable person only, and now he is not registered. So in this case, audit cannot be conducted. But in case the officer feels that there are certain tax evasion or prospective GST liability, then in such case, the case can be transferred to the jurisdiction GST officer. There are certain scenario where the documents is seized by some another department, or the investigation is being carried out at certain other places. There, in such case, generally the liberty is given to the GST tax administrator to take a call in such kind of a situation. And in case the data is readily available by the taxpayer, then they can conduct the audit. However, the documents are seized and the document which they want are not available, then in such case, the audit would be deferred. And in case when the auditee is found in fraudulent activity, then there is no need for the audit. They can directly transfer this case to the enforcement wing. So we all wonder that how basically selection of the registered person would be carried out for conducting the audit, because we might have encountered that taxpayer with very small turnover is covered under the audit. However, there are very large turnover based taxpayer also, those who are not getting covered under the GST audit by the department. So basically, they have identified and categorized the taxpayer based on the turnover or the available of the manpower during that particular audit commissionerate, and they categorize each taxpayer as large, medium, or small. It may be different due to different audit commissionerate depending on the manpower. It may possible that in Maharashtra, 1,000 crore turnover company can be considered as a medium, whereas in particular other state where that is not so developed state, medium turnover category of taxpayer can also be considered as a large unit in that particular audit commissionerate. So they will definitely select the registered taxpayer, and reason for selecting the same would be recorded and intimated to the commissionerate. And audit manual is also saying that 20% of the taxpayer to be audited are selected based on the local risk factors after obtaining the approval of the chief commissioner. So we will see that what are the local risk parameters for selecting one particular taxpayer for GST audit. There are many risk parameters are given. If you see minutely that nobody will escape, because there are one or another instances where there are certain local parameters are falling into for one particular taxpayer. But you can see that list is very vast. You can see there are certain issue which is, you cannot overthink of. Let's say I have mentioned over here that if you have cancelled e-way bill for more than 2%, then also your case could be selected for GST audit. And there are certain cases where we have filed the GST return and tax adjusted from cash ledger is less amount. So they are more or less those who are paying the tax only through credit ledger only. And it may possible that the taxpayer is using the multiple PAN number or mobile ID or mobile number or email ID. In such kind of situation also there are the parameters, and particularly for those risky industries where taxpayers are operating into, such kind of parameters would enable the taxpayer selection for GST audit. You can go through that at your convenient time. So based on these risk parameters, the weightage would be given to the taxpayer, and total number of weightage and total number of weight, that is the mark that has been awarded, the highest mark would be selected for the GST audit by the department. So what they actually do once they start GST verification process. So as we discussed, they will ask the data from your side. First, they will start the desk review, and in desk review, they will verify the data holistically. They understand the nature of the business. They verify the very source document and very basic documents like your financial statement, tax audit report, trial balance, balance sheet. And they analyze the compliance level. They verify GST return, and whatever the apparent GST liabilities are there, they will intimate to you. And later on, they will go in depth verification by verifying the revenue risk analysis, that what sort of area that may have a revenue leakage prone. And they will also verify the trend analysis. CBIC audit manual also posted various ratio analysis also. The only concern over here is that to verify such kind of ratios, they have to get the concrete information from the taxpayer, and then only they will be verified. Now this is only the question to be answered, that how source information from the taxpayer they are getting, and based on that they get the concrete result. We will see the ratio analysis also in a later slide. So they start the audit. One important point to note over here, that basically once they start the audit, they need to get it conclude within 3 months, if it not extended. But what is meaning by the commencement of the audit? Because they need to conclude the audit within 3 months from the commencement of the audit. But if you read the definition of the commencement of audit, it says that the date on which the records and other documents called for by the tax authorities are made available by the registered person or actual institution of the audit, whichever is later. So we practically have seen in such kind of scenario that they keep on asking various details. So the moment they ask certain details which is not warranted earlier, so later on, once they ask for the additional fresh information, so that date could be considered as a commencement of audit, and accordingly 3 months would be counted. So they get practically the ample amount of time because of the lacuna in the definition of the commencement of the audit. So they will verify your books of account. Certain test indicative parameters has been also provided in the GST audit manual itself, like how GST auditor would verify RCM transaction. So they have provided various questionnaires, various FAQs, and practical examples over there that what auditors should verify in that particular area to identify the prospective liability. Obviously, they will verify GST return, etc., and compliance level. But together with that, I give you certain example that, let's say, in case of an exempt supply, they will verify whether you have classified the same supply as exempt before the GST come. Let's say the company is operated since since earlier, and when they migrated to GST, it may possible that to avoid the anti-dumping duty, they have changed the classification of certain product, and accordingly they have classified the product to new HSN, and accordingly they have safeguard that anti-dumping duty, as well as they get the reduced GST rate also. So they will compare whether the same product or same service that they are providing, what would be the classification before GST. Second is whether bank account there are many minute issue, but they are highlighting this issue because of various reasons. Like, if you have not updated your bank account detail, then what happened? It may possible that your audit has been concluded, para has been raised, but you have not accepted your liability. But just because you have not paid the tax, even after the reminder, even after the demand order, your bank account is required to be freeze. But since you have not updated your bank account details, so they would not be able to freeze that account. So updation of the bank account detail is also required. Such kind of points are being added in GST audit manual. Similarly, they have also mentioned to such kind of example only, that what would be the date of commencement of business, that also you need to check in case of a new registration. It may possible that a person might have crossed the turnover threshold of 20 lakh or 40 lakh, as the case may be, but he has taken the GST registration after that, and he has posted the date of commencement of a business later on, once they have already crossed the GST threshold limit. So to that particular period from which their limit has been crossed, and to the date from which he has obtained the GST registration, it may possible that GST liability can be skipped. So certain example and FAQs and practical scenario is also being provided in GST audit manual. Okay, so we are discussing about the ratio analysis that they have provided. You see that this kind of ratio would help not only to GST officer, but together with that, we also have to analyze from our aspect also, that if we want to undertake the GST audit, though it is not certification by the chartered accountant, but we commonly term as GST audit only, be it a GST review or pre-GST audit, those that we are conducting for our clients, we can use this ratio also to identify any prospective liability for our client as well before the department officer come for the audit. So what sort of ratios are provided in this particular area? First is that input tax credit availed divided by the total tax paid. Higher the ratio would tantamount that you have utilized the higher input tax credit to pay the tax. So it may possible that your procurement would increase, and accordingly your ratio for payment of the tax would be increased. But there are other possibilities also, like you have wrongly utilized the ITC, or it may possible that there may be underutilization, undervaluation of the goods, and it may possible that there are certain removal of the goods without payment of tax also, or there are certain ITC which you have claimed for the exempt supply, and this is the reason why you have a component of the input tax credit has been increased. So parameters you have to see practically by going through the facts of the case, but these are the indicative parameters that they have provided. Like in one of the ratio also they have provided that outward supply of the scrap divided by the total outward supply. So generally it happens that the industry which operate in particular segment, they have fixed or normal scrap ratio that they are they are having in that particular operation. So it may possible that in one particular year only 2% scrap is being generated, but in later period only 1% or less than that scrap is generated. So what these kind of parameters indicate? This indicates that if this ratio come down in subsequent year, then it may possible that the scrap can be supplied without payment of tax, or it may possible that person is not reporting at all, or there is a scrap is being generated from the manufacturing process, or it can be from the job workers, and if the nature of the business is so. This kind of ratio, exempt supply ratio, if you have a higher exempt supply ratio or at all you have an exempt supply, then auditor will verify whether you have reversed the ITC as per rule 42 or 43 or not. And it may possible that certain supplies which actually is not an exempt supply, but you have considered that exempt, and such verification can be carried out by the both the end. Department officer can also verify, and we as chartered accountant for our consultants also can verify the reason for the same. I'm not going into the all the ratios. So basically what happens that once they conducted the GST audit, they issue a paras to you, and depending on the paras, you take a call whether you agree to that particular para or not. The moment you do not agree with that paras, they will transfer your case to the range jurisdiction officer, and range jurisdiction officer will issue a show cause notice, and adjudication process is being carried out as per section 73 or 74 as the case may be. But in case you want to, pay the liability and settle the para, then a draft letter is also being provided in the GST audit manual itself, which you can provide to your audit party, that this is the case where I do not want to litigate further and I ready to pay by DRC 03. So one would say that what is the duration of this audit? How many days they will conduct the audit? So as per audit manual, though this is only a indicative tentative list only, the actual number of days audit is being changed from person to person. But generally they are saying that for the large taxpayer, for 1 year audit, they require 1 week time. But for every additional year, they only require 25% extra time. So if they are conducting the audit for 5 years, at the max, they will conclude the audit within 16 days. So this is only a tentative list. Actual, as I have discussed, that actual number of days taken by them, that depends on the person to person. And manual is also saying that once your audit is being carried out and concluded very satisfactory, then they will award you the accredited status, since you do not have any additional liability and your compliance level is very good. Then in such case, your case would not be selected for every audit cycle, and next audit for your case would be only conducted after the 3 years from the last date of the audit. So this is all about brief of CBIC audit manual. We will switch to the second part, which is the practical approach that chartered accountant can have for conducting GST audit or GST review. We have identified and we have covered this practical approach based on GST audit manual recommendation, as well as our routine practice or professional practice that we are following. So what should be the starting point for auditor? Now auditor, you mean to say that being a chartered accountant. Earlier auditor, that means the department auditor. Now we are discussing for our cases that what should we verify. First, whenever we start the audit, we understand the business, we understand the nature of the transaction, and we also ask for certain contracts with the debtors or creditors to verify that what is the modus operandi or SOP that the particular our client is following. Similarly, we also review the GST registration certificate and reason for the same, because it may again, as discussed, that for verifying the commencement of the business, we also want to assure that the liability has not been triggered earlier. And similarly, as per section 18, if any input tax credit can be claimed once the business is start, in case the client has accumulated stock on hand. Starting point would be we start with the data once which is final only. So it may possible that generally GST audit is getting started once the financial statement is been signed, the final books of account has been closed, and we will verify the stock register that what are the area and location for which the GST registration is required or additional place of business are there. We will also verify that what sort of stock which is lying at particular place for verification whether there is any ITC reversal in case of lost, certain goods are being lost at different location. So we will have first we will have the location wise data, and then we will have the location wise all the trial balance to verify, because we have to verify GST audit GSTN wise. Then we can see the statutory or internal audit report. We will see in next part then what each document will contain. Example, let's say internal audit report would contain certain deficiency with regards to GST compliance, so that we will get the ready information by referring to that document only. And once we start the particular fresh year GST audit or GST review, we will see last year GSTR 9 and 9C for annual compliance. In case they have any adverse remark or is there any additional liability or DRC 03 that has been paid during previous year. Depending on the industry, there are various advance ruling has been ruled out in particular industries where it may possible that any adverse advance ruling would have an impact in your client's business, so that you can guide your clients accordingly. So what are the documents or the area where GST auditor can verify? We will start with trial balance. In case of a, let's say, trial balance, you can verify there are coding system is being followed, like assets, for assets, let's say category 1A is given, for liability category 2 is given, so that you can get the idea that what particular ledger and particular grouping is all about. By looking to that, you can look at various other area or grouping. Let's say in case of a creditors, if you have a long outstanding creditors, then you can obviously raise the question that your case would be covered under ITC reversal because you have not paid to your creditors within 180 days. So it can be prospective liability can be triggered by looking to such kind of reports only. Similarly, we can look at the tax audit report also, which is having many information with respect to the GST compliance. Like if you refer clause 18, which is for fixed assets and depreciation, there you can get the idea about the addition of the fixed assets as well as the discard of the fixed assets. Whenever you see the discard of the fixed assets, you can verify whether your client has paid the tax on particular sale of assets or not. Compare with the provision of section 18(6), where ITC reversal is also required considering the life of fixed assets at 5 years. Similarly, clause 27, where one needs to provide input tax credit breakup, that what is the opening credit, what is the addition to the credit, and what is the closing balance. From there also you can verify closing balance of the ITC with respect to closing balance of the electronic credit ledger, and deviation, if any, can be questioned. In case of the audit report also, in case there are certain issue where provision is not being made in books of account for obsolete item, and there are certain reconciliation of difference there, qualification would be provided by the auditor. By looking to that, you can also verify that certain area where you have to go through in detail. Like in case of a director report also, if they have launched any new product or they have changed any marketing pattern, then they can have the reference in director report. By reviewing that director report also, you get the idea about your verification style. In case you refer store ledger, then in that also you get the idea that certain quantity has been discarded. Then the same has been reported in that particular store ledger or stock ledger. if you refer any contracts with the supplier or debtors, which is crucial as far as the valuation aspects are concerned, because there are certain terms and conditions, which is obviously the facts to calculate your valuation provision, because there are certain conditions for outward supply, which is directly in nexus with the valuation provision. Let's say packing charges, etc., that is being added in the main supply, that has been mentioned in the contract register. Then that could be classified as a composite supply once you raise the invoice. So by looking to the various terms and contract with, and particularly PO, you get the idea about such kind of transactions. Okay, let's say we are verifying certain category wise transaction. As far as we want to identify certain prospective liability of our client, or we want to optimize the input tax credit, then we are verifying certain areas. One area which is generally being skipped and generally being identified by the tax officer, that you have not paid the RCM. So how one chartered accountant can verify whether client has accurately complied with all the RCM provision or not? Obviously, one would start with the notification only, and by going through the notification, they get the idea that what sort of goods and what sort of services are being covered. But here we are here to discuss the practical aspect. So I am giving you one certain examples. Like generally the RCM, we are verifying expense side, because there is a RCM means there is a inward supplies we have to verify. So for verifying the inward supply, we are verifying the debit side of the P&L. However, it may possible that the grouping for such kind of expenses is being recorded as the credit side of the P&L, and credit side of that main account would be netted off. So in such cases, that would not be available on the debit side of the P&L, and if a chartered accountant only see what sort of expenses are on the debit side, then this liability can be skipped. Similarly, if one would verify, let's say RCM has been complied on import of service or not, in such case also one would verify foreign exchange fluctuation account, because generally the transaction with the foreign suppliers, and whenever there is a foreign exchange fluctuation, the same needs to be reported under foreign exchange fluctuation account. So by going through that, auditor would get the idea of the party suppliers with whom such kind of foreign exchange transactions are being carried out. Similarly, for 195 TDS has been deducted, if such suppliers would be the target point for verifying whether is there any import of service, and if there is import of service, whether you have paid the RCM or not. Similarly, if you verify GSTR 2A or 2B, you get the idea that those who are registered taxpayer, they need to report that their liability, their supply is covered under reverse charge. So if you have procured certain supplies from such kind of person, then your GSTR 2A would get the compilation of RCM liability showing as yes from such kind of supplier. So you can at least verify that the RCM liability is confirmed on such kind of supply. There are other RCM liabilities also for unregistered suppliers as well. In case if you are trying to verify the outward supply, similarly, one important point that you have to verify that what is the product mix composition. It may possible that generally once the ERP or SAP system has been established and they have mentioned in their particular system itself, you cannot punch any sales record without giving the effect of GST. So it is not generally possible that sales would be reported without GST. However, nowadays we are verifying and we are seeing that GST department is giving the notice for classification and valuation provision. So one would need to analyze outward supply with that particular aspect. One important point over here to note that it may possible that your client is supplying two products. However, they both are not naturally bundled, but their client is supplying that product considering only one product and charging one GST rate. If the product is afterwards classified as mixed supply, it may possible that GST liability could be triggered on a higher rate basis. By reviewing the financial statement also, you can very well verify that rate and taxes are containing certain details where tax liabilities, or rather certain late fees or interest on the particular tax are being paid. So in case you have come across that GST late fee has been paid, you can very well question at that time whether you have paid the interest portion on such late filing of GSTR 3B or not. While verifying the fixed assets, we have discussed that once the fixed asset has been sold out, one need to verify whether that fixed assets, the GST has been paid on that fixed assets considering section 18(6). And in case of other current assets, obviously the balance with government authority, closing balance of the GST input tax credit is being lying on, and where you can verify the same with your electronic credit ledger. This CBIC or Model All India CBIC GST Audit Manual is also having the chapter considering that accounting standard and that GST interplay. So there also they have mentioned various accounting standards that GST auditor need to, GST tax officer need to verify while following certain accounting standard as well as the GST implication, like AS2. The moment one person is taxpayer is following AS2, if they have write it off certain inventories, then section 17(5) would trigger whether ITC for that stock write-off has been reversed or not. And similarly, in case when the person is reporting certain supplies at goods in transit, then one should verify with section compliance of section 16(2) condition. In case of such compliance with condition of section 16(2), it says that you can only claim the input tax credit when you receive the goods. However, it may possible that on a certain tax period and the goods may be in transit, but due to the accounting system reporting, input purchase entry has been reported, but you have to make sure that ITC thereon could not be claimed once till the goods has been received by the taxpayer. Certain other accounting standard interplay which says that if you look at AS7 or AS9, in case of a construction contract, the revenue is required to be booked as per the percentage of completion method. However, in GST, the invoice should be raised as per time of supply. So it may possible that there is a difference between the revenue as per books of account and difference of revenue that has been reported under GST return. Reconciliation thereof would be reported under GSTR 9C. In case of related party transaction, AS18, you get the list from the audit report also. Notes to account also you can refer to for related party transaction. As far as the transaction with the related parties are concerned, as far as the recipient is eligible for the ITC, there is no question as because we have a saving proviso to Rule 28. However, in case where related party transaction recipient of that is related party is not eligible for input tax credit, then in such case your transaction would be at market value. I can give you one live example where car has been sold to a director of the company, but even though the director is registered, but the ITC for that particular car is not available to the director. Supply of that car by company to the director must be at market value, and company could not take any value for GST purpose. I have provided certain analysis as far as the sales, purchase, debit note and credit notes are concerned. I am quickly going through the same. In case one chartered accountant is verifying sales data that has been provided by the client, he will verify certain aspect. One aspect would be the nature of supply. Nature of supply in the sense when he get the data in soft copy, he will analyze the data by filtering the GST number. GST number which is the same state. Let's say if you are verifying the GST audit of the Maharashtra registered taxpayer and the sale is being also made to the Maharashtra customer only, that is the GST number start with 27, then tax should be CGST and SGST only, IGST should not be there, and vice versa. Similarly, he should also verify list of HSN and GST rate applicable to that particular HSN. He will also verify, he could also verify the history of rate change in case one particular HSN is awarded one particular rate, but later on that is getting changed, even though there is no change in rate notification for that particular supply. And similarly, as far as for purchase analysis, he can verify particularly ledger head that is relevant for the ITC, because he can identify certain list of ledgers like sales promotion expenses, sponsorship expenses, or gift. Such kind of expenses are either relevant for ITC reversal purposes or RCM purposes, and based on such categorization of the head, he can identify the eligibility of the ITC. Similarly, matching with the GST Act 2A2B is unavoidable. We have 2 days back only, we have recent circular clarifying the issue between difference between GST Act 2A and 2B. So that is also to be considered. And as far as the credit note and debit notes are concerned, one only important point over here is that whenever there is a reduction in revenue, the reduction in revenue with GST impact, that is the credit note with GST, could only be possible if it fulfills the condition of section 34. If that condition of section 34 is not getting fulfilled, then he cannot raise the credit note with GST. So whenever there is a reduction in GST, that is the debit side of the revenue income, he should verify for this aspect. As discussed earlier, as far as the stock analysis is concerned, he can opt for the reconciliation. Even that reconciliation is also being reported as tax audit para also, and based on that they will identify is there any stock disposal of or free quantity is given. In case of free quantity is given, then such case would be liable for the ITC reversal. So I think I have tried to cover as many as practical aspect that is possible within the time. I trust that I could be able to add certain value addition to my chartered accountant fraternity. Thank you for the session.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for your valuable insight onto this topic. Sir, your in-depth explanation has provided us with a clear understanding of the complex concept that form the backbone of this profession. Sir, we have gained invaluable knowledge from your expertise. Thank you so much for your sharing your wisdom and your valuable time. Your wisdom will undoubtedly serve as a guiding light as we navigate the complexity of the accounting and financial world. Thank you so much, sir. As we were running shortage of time, so we could not take the question, and we are apologized for the same. Thank you so much, CP. Sorry, sir.
If there are any questions, you can mail me. I will revert to the questions, and you can also share this PPT. Because of the short of time, I could not go through all the pages, so that would be helpful for the participants.
Okay, sir.
Okay.
Thank you so much, CP committee, for this giving me this opportunity. And thank you so much all the audience who had attended this seminar very passionately. Thank you so much. Have a good day. Thank you.